Good day, everyone. Good Erev Shabbos. She here at the beginning of the Parsha quotes the famous statement of Chazal, "Ma'inyan Shmita Eitzel Har Sinai." Why the Torah give us the mitzvah of Shmita with the introduction that it's Bahar Sinai, that it was given at Sinai. And Rashi quotes what the Talmud teaches us, that just like this mitzvah was given to us at Sinai, so all mitzvot of the Torah have their origin at Mount Sinai. So over the ages, all of the commentators have dealt with the problem of what is so special about Shmita, that the Torah has to tell us that it was Bahar Sinai, and none of the other mitzvot does the Torah concentrate the location of the mitzvah, so to speak, Bahar Sinai, as it does here. So as you can imagine, there are a myriad interpretations. But there's a general idea, I think, that all of us can follow. And that is the nature of the mitzvah of Shmita. Perhaps out of all of the mitzvot of the Torah, Shmita is the most utopian one. By that I mean that it has the least practicality. If you do not till the land, if you do not plant or harvest, the next year you won't have anything to eat. And here the Torah promises us that there'll be enough to eat the 7th year, the Shmita year itself, the 8th year, the year after Shmita, even until the 9th year, till the regular produce of crops returns. So that's a mitzvah that has a utopian flavor to it. In order for the mitzvah to be effective, we need, so to speak, nature to cooperate in a way that is most unlikely. So because of this nature of the mitzvah of Shmita, now the mitzvah of Shmita is a social mitzvah. It has to do not only with land and planting, it has to do with commercial transactions. It has to do with loans between borrower and lender. It leads to the Shnata Yovel, to the year, the 50th year, which to a great extent reorders society. It's the reset button on everything that occurs. So we would say, as has often been said, that I understand that if the Torah wants us to fulfill mitzvot, put on tefillin, eat kosher, celebrate the holidays, I understand I need a Torah for that. I wouldn't come up with that myself. But on social matters, on how society should function, how basic economies should operate, on the relationship between lender and borrower, I don't need a Torah. That we can leave to human ingenuity and the ability of humankind to adjust to differing circumstances. The Gemara itself says that. Torah, if the Torah would not have been given to us, we would have taken certain social values simply by observing the animal kingdom. We would learn the cleanliness from the cat, all sorts of things the Gemara mentions there. In other words, there's such a thing that's called natural law. That's true in all societies, that aside from the legislative law which exists, there's a concept of natural law. That this is how life is meant to be lived. And that one is subject not just to the legislative law, but one is subject to natural law as well. And natural law is human law. It's what human beings define as being the law of society. Now, naturally, that fluctuates. There are different generations and different societies and different human beings. So there's no hard and fast natural law. There only is a variety of human conduct depending on the time and circumstances and place where it occurs. But throughout the human history, and certainly throughout Jewish history, this has been a very contentious issue. The Haskalah, the Enlightenment of the last few hundred years, contended Yehei Yehudi b'veisecha, at home you can be Jewish, you have a kosher kitchen, observe the laws of domestic life, but benodol mitzeisecha. But in the outside world, you're just like everybody else. You're a member of society. And that was held to be logical and correct and even admirable. There was a time when the Jews were proud that their children or grandchildren attended Columbia University. Things change. So the Torah came to give us here a utopian mitzvah that's really a societal mitzvah, and to emphasize to us that this mitzvah is not dependent upon human understanding, and it's not dependent upon the vagaries of human society, but it is rather an absolute because it was given Bahar Sinai. It was given at Sinai, and therefore it has the imprimatur, so to speak, of heaven upon it. So it's a value. So even if we are not able to fulfill the mitzvah because of technical reasons, nevertheless, the value is there for us to study and absorb and copy. So throughout Jewish history, this has been a constant struggle as to whether or not the norms of society are ours as well. Now, it's interesting because there are times in the history of civilization, so of Western civilization at least, when the norms of the general society are pretty much in line with the norms and values of Jewish society, of the Torah. But there are times when that is not true. Now, in our own experience of lifetime, we have seen how the norms of society switched radically. So when I grew up, there was no apparent contradiction between the norms of general American society, let us say, and Jewish society. But that's not true in the world of my grandchildren, where there are enormous differences and contradictions. The general society goes one way, and the Jewish society remains with its own value system, which at many times is at odds completely with the norms of general society. And that's a very difficult time for Jews to live in. And because we are a small minority, and we are subject to the pressures of the majority culture, so in many respects, Jewish society always feels impelled to give in to the pressures of the general society. There are innumerable examples of this that exist today. And to a certain extent, therefore, it is difficult for Jewish society even to express its opposition to the general value. We're in the midst of a struggle in the Western world regarding many of these issues. But for a period of time, if one held an opinion contrary to the radical position pushed by the general society, then one could be ostracized. One could lose one's means of livelihood. One could be attacked. Eventually one could be imprisoned. So society changes, constantly changes. And sometimes certainly not for the better. Becomes very rough. So therefore, when it comes to judge society, and when it comes to judge what is the utopian vision for society, if everything worked perfectly, and we would institute if everything worked perfectly and we would institute a society of perfection, what would it look like? Well, if you don't have the plan, you don't know what it will look like. So Bahar Sinai is really the revelation of the plan. In a perfect society, there would be the ability to feed everyone for years. There would be a manageable system of the economics of borrowing and lending. There would be a reset that would allow for an equality of outcome. So the Torah has to tell us that. Because if we rely on ourselves, so in the perfect society of the 1950s or 60s or 70s and of 2020, two different worlds, absolute worlds in opposition that really don't share any basic values. So how are we to decide what to do? So the Torah came along and said, I'm going to give you Bahar Sinai. I'm going to give you the plan. It's like someone is going to build a beautiful building. And one, in order to develop a real estate project, so you have to find the proper location. And the old adage, which is so true, that real estate is really location, location, location. So you have to find the location. You have to be able to develop the ground. But you have to have an architectural plan, what it's going to look like 5 years from now when it's done. And you cannot say, well, I'm going to build the first 3 stories and then we'll figure out what to do. In the physical world, that's an impossibility. But in the social world, that's what we always do. That's why Chazal said, "Ezeu chacham haroes anolot." The wise person, when he digs the foundation, already knows what the penthouse is going to look like. He has a complete view of things. But without that, if everything is piecemeal, so it depends. I use a bad example, but the example is good, but my use of it is questionable. in the 1970s and 80s, many of the baseball stadia of the major leagues in the United States were rebuilt. And they were rebuilt in a certain style. The stadium became round. They became more uniform. The last one that was built that way was in Chicago. Today, it is known as the ugliest baseball park in the United States because our tastes changed, economic conditions changed, and it's no longer attractive. If that's true about physical buildings, it's certainly true about societies and value systems. Now, we're all products of the time that we live in. We cannot go back hundreds of years because we don't know what happened then. We can make up a narrative as to what happened then, but we really don't know. And we can't go ahead hundreds of years because we are also without a clue as to what that will look like. So we're forced to live in the present. Living in the present is very difficult because the present does not allow for strong values, does not allow for basic ideas. The present is always fluctuating. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe to do this, not to do this. So Har Sinai came to introduce stability into human civilization. And stability is done by having an architectural plan that will show what everything will look like when it's all done. Now, many times we have projects that we never quite seem to finish or accomplish. There's a building in New York they've been building it for 146 years, and it's still not done. There are buildings in Europe that are still not done. But we have a glimpse as to what it's supposed to look like when it is done. In music, there's something that's called the unfinished symphony. I think it's Schubert. So musicians guess what the finish should be. No two agree. And it's impossible for them to agree because the original composer isn't there anymore. Nevertheless, many times the unfinished symphony is beautiful by itself, without it ever having come to completion. I think that's the Bahar. We could think of Shmita and Yovel in those terms. It's the unfinished symphony of society. It's an architectural plan that has never yet been built. According to many Mefarshim, the Jewish people never observed Shmita in their entire history. Nevertheless, it is of value. It stands as a representative of what society can and should be. And as such, it fulfills an enormous role. It helps us avoid making great social errors. The Novi, we read the Haftorah not long ago. It said, "Kohanim v'Levim asher shomru es mishmarti." The Kohanim and the Levim, the sons of Tzadok, who guarded my set ways, b'ta'os b'nei Yisrael me'olai. When the Jewish people went away, they turned away from me. Society went one way, the Kohanim and the Levim did not go that way. We could say that generally regarding the Jewish people. But it's very difficult because of the pressure of the majority that rests upon us. So I saw amongst many commentators the idea that Yovel never was observed because Yovel is a goal. It's a utopian goal. And in attempting to observe it, we somehow diminish it. Now that's a radical idea, but it's an idea in physics as well, in quantum physics, that if you measure the atom, simply by measuring it, you change it. How does that work? No one knows how that works. But it's been proven over and over again to be a scientific fact. So the Torah at Har Sinai set up this utopian society for us so that we could measure our society vis-a-vis that utopian society. How close are we? Is our value system the same? Is our goal the same? What if we had all of the power and ability in the world today? Would we observe a Yovel? I don't know. Because of all of that, that's why the Torah connected Har Sinai to this issue, because it's only Har Sinai that gives us certainty, gives us continuity, it gives us the ability to trust, the ability to go forward in an otherwise very confusing and difficult world. So thank you for coming. Have a Shabbat Shalom. Next week, yes, we still have before Shavuos. Thank you.
I was watching an American movie on LL with the Hebrew subtitles, and